The village of shadows. In the heart of the sprawling plains of Ikulama, nestled among swaying palms and golden grasslands, lived a kind-hearted woman named Amara. She was known throughout the village for her gentle demeanor and willingness to help others. However, her kindness did little to shield her from the scorn of the community. For 12 years, she and her husband, Obina, had been married without the blessing of children. In Ikulama, where motherhood was seen as the pinnacle of a woman's worth, this was a heavy burden to bear. The villagers whispered behind Amara's back, their voices laced with cruelty. "She's a barren tree," they would say, "no fruit will ever come from her." The laughter of women often faded into sharp whispers when Amara approached the marketplace. Children were ushered away from her as though her supposed barrenness might be contagious. The exclusion was most painful during community gatherings, where Amara was pointedly ignored or outright barred from attending. Amara endured the humiliation in silence, her head held high despite the tears that often threatened to spill. She found solace in the sacred Baobab tree, an ancient giant that stood at the edge of the village. The tree, with its sprawling roots and thick, knotted bark, was said to possess mystical powers. Many believed it could grant miracles to those who prayed with pure hearts. Amara would sit beneath its shade, her hands clasped in prayer, her voice barely above a whisper as she poured out her heart. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm amber glow over Ikulama, Amara sat under the Baobab tree, lost in prayer. The air was still, save for the occasional rustle of leaves. Suddenly, she felt a presence. Opening her eyes, she saw an old woman standing before her. The woman's back was bent with age, her face lined with wisdom, but her eyes sparkled with a vitality that seemed almost otherworldly. "I see you come here often," the woman said, her voice soft yet commanding. "You carry a weight heavier than most, child." Amara was startled but nodded, unsure of who this stranger was. "I only seek peace," she replied cautiously, "and perhaps, a miracle." The old woman smiled faintly. "The roots of your pain hold the fruit of your future," she said cryptically. "When the storm comes, stand strong." Before Amara could ask what she meant, the woman turned and disappeared into the dusk, leaving behind an air of mystery. Amara sat in stunned silence, her heart pounding. The words lingered in her mind, puzzling yet strangely comforting. Little did she know that this encounter would mark the beginning of a journey that would change her life forever. The storm and the dream. The village of Ikulama was cloaked in darkness that night, with clouds so thick they blotted out the stars. A restless energy hung in the air, making even the animals uneasy. The villagers huddled inside their huts as a violent storm rolled in, the first of its kind in many years. Thunder roared like an angry beast, and lightning danced across the sky, illuminating the vast plains in eerie, fleeting bursts. Amara sat on a woven mat near the hearth, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. Obina, her husband, paced the room, his brow furrowed with concern. "This storm feels unnatural," he muttered, peeking through the window at the torrential rain. "Something about it feels wrong." Amara said nothing, her thoughts drawn to the Baobab tree at the edge of the village. She couldn't shake the cryptic words of the mysterious elder who had appeared to her days ago, "The roots of your pain hold the fruit of your future. When the storm comes, stand strong." Suddenly, a deafening crack split the air. The ground trembled beneath them, and Obina stumbled backward, nearly losing his balance. Amara's heart leapt as she realized the sound had come from the direction of the Baobab tree. A vivid flash of lightning revealed a sight that took her breath away. Through the rain-streaked window, she could see the sacred tree split in two, its massive trunk glowing faintly in the darkness. By morning, the storm had passed, but its aftermath was stark. The once majestic Baobab tree now stood as a fractured monument, its roots exposed and its leaves scattered across the ground. Word spread quickly through the village, and groups of villagers gathered near the tree, whispering in hushed, fearful tones. "It's a bad omen," an elderly man said, shaking his head. "The gods are angry." "No," countered another, "it is a warning, something or someone has disturbed the balance." Amara avoided the crowd, her thoughts racing. That night, exhausted from the weight of her emotions, she fell into a restless sleep. Her dreams were vivid and unlike any she had experienced before. She found herself standing in a golden field, the storm clouds of the previous night swirling overhead. From the clouds emerged a radiant figure, glowing with an ethereal light. The figure was a woman, tall and graceful, her presence commanding yet comforting. "I am Obianuju," the woman said, her voice resonating like a melody carried on the wind. "Your patience has reached the heavens, and your prayers have been heard." Amara knelt instinctively, overcome with awe. "What do you mean, Great One?" she asked. "The storm that raged over your village was not meant to bring fear but to reveal truth," Obianuju said. "Tomorrow, seek the root of the Baobab tree. It holds the key to your destiny. What you find will test your courage and faith, but it will also lead you to the fulfillment you seek." Before Amara could ask more, the goddess raised her hand, and the dream dissolved into darkness. Amara woke with a start, her heart pounding. The first rays of sunlight crept into their hut, casting long shadows on the walls. She lay still, replaying the dream in her mind. Was it real? Was it truly a message from the gods? Or was it just her mind grasping for hope in the face of despair? As she sat up, Obina stood beside her. "You were restless all night," he said groggily. "Is everything all right?" Amara hesitated before telling him about the dream. She watched his expression shift from concern to skepticism as she recounted the glowing figure and the goddess's words. "Amara," he said gently, taking her hands, "I know how much you've prayed and how much you want this. But, what if it's just a dream? The storm, the tree, it could all be coincidence." Amara pulled her hands away, her resolve hardening. "It wasn't just a dream, Obina. I felt her presence. Her words, they felt real. I need to go to the tree." Obina sighed, his shoulders sagging. "If this is what your heart tells you to do, then I won't stop you. But please, be careful. The villagers are already stirring up rumors about the tree and what it means. They might not understand." With her husband's cautious support, Amara felt a surge of determination. The cryptic words of the goddess echoed in her mind, filling her with a strange mixture of hope and fear. Whatever lay beneath the roots of the Baobab tree, she knew she had to find it. It was her destiny, and she was ready to face whatever trials awaited her, the sacred root. The early morning air in Ikulama was fresh and crisp, carrying the scent of wet earth from the storm the night before. Amara wrapped a shawl tightly around her shoulders as she walked toward the shattered Baobab tree, her heart racing with anticipation. The tree stood like a wounded giant, its massive trunk split down the middle. The villagers had stayed away, too fearful of the storm's aftermath to venture near it. As she approached, the ground felt strangely warm beneath her feet. The exposed roots of the tree sprawled out like a web, their gnarled forms eerily beautiful in the morning light. Among the roots, one in particular caught her eye. It glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. Intrigued and slightly apprehensive, Amara knelt beside it and began to dig with her hands. The soil was soft, and soon her fingers brushed against something smooth and cool. She unearthed a small gourd, its surface golden and intricately engraved with patterns that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. A delicate vine, golden as well, was tied around its neck, and it emitted a faint warmth that made her fingertips tingle. Amara's breath caught as she examined the gourd. Carefully, she untied the vine and opened it. Inside was a sparkling elixir, its liquid swirling with iridescent colors like a living rainbow. Tucked beside the gourd was a small piece of parchment, inscribed with symbols she couldn't understand. They looked ancient, their meanings hidden in their elegant curves and lines. Not knowing what to make of her discovery, Amara took the gourd and the note to Elder Chukudi, the village's seer and keeper of wisdom. Chukudi was a revered figure, his wisdom sought by villagers for guidance on matters both mundane and mystical. When Amara arrived at his hut, the elder was seated cross-legged on a woven mat, his eyes closed in meditation. The air inside was heavy with the scent of burning herbs. Amara hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Elder Chukudi, I seek your counsel." The elder opened his eyes, his gaze sharp despite his years. "Amara," he said, his voice a deep rumble, "what brings you here?" She carefully placed the gourd and the parchment before him, recounting the events of the storm, her dream of Obianuju, and her discovery at the Baobab tree. Chukudi listened intently, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he picked up the parchment and studied the symbols. His brow furrowed as he traced the lines with a finger. Finally, he looked up at her. "This is no ordinary find, child. The elixir you hold is a gift, but it comes with great responsibility." "What does it mean?" Amara asked, her voice trembling with a mix of curiosity and fear. "The symbols speak of trials," Chukudi explained. "Drinking this elixir will open the path to your deepest desire, but it will not be easy. You will face jealousy, fear, and betrayal. Each trial will test your strength and resolve. Only by enduring them will you achieve what you seek." Amara's heart pounded. "And if I fail?" Chukudi's gaze was steady. "Failure means losing what you hold most dear. The path is not for the faint of heart." Amara sat in silence, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts. She had prayed for years, endured ridicule, and held on to hope when there was none. Could she face the trials Chukudi spoke of? Could she risk failure? Finally, she stood, her resolve firm. "I will drink it. Whatever the trials, I will face them." Chukudi nodded solemnly. "Then may the gods guide you." That evening, Amara returned home and sat quietly in the glow of the fire. Obina watched her carefully, sensing her unease. "Did you find what you were looking for?" he asked. Amara hesitated before showing him the gourd. She explained what Chukudi had told her, her voice steady but her hands trembling. Obina's face was a mixture of worry and disbelief. "Amara, are you sure about this? The risks?" "I am sure," she interrupted. "I cannot let fear hold me back. This could be the answer to everything we've prayed for." With Obina's hesitant support, Amara lifted the gourd to her lips and drank. The elixir was cool and sweet, yet it burned as it slid down her throat, leaving a strange warmth in her chest. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a wave of dizziness overtook her, and she collapsed into Obina's arms. In the days that followed, Amara experienced strange symptoms. Her body felt different, her senses heightened. She dreamed vividly of glowing fields and whispered voices, her mind filled with fragments of images she couldn't piece together. Her appetite changed, and she grew restless, as if something within her was shifting. One morning, as she was washing clothes by the river, she felt a flutter in her abdomen, a sensation she had never felt before. Her breath caught, and her hands froze. Could it be? Days later, her suspicions were confirmed. Amara was with child. The news spread through the village like wildfire. The woman they had mocked, excluded, and pitied for years was finally going to be a mother. Some villagers marveled at what they called a miracle, while others whispered that it was the work of dark forces. Amara ignored the gossip, focusing instead on the joy that filled her heart. She often placed her hands on her growing belly, feeling the life within her and wondering what trials lay ahead. Little did she know, her journey was only just beginning. The birth of the chosen one. 8 months had passed since the night Amara drank the elixir. The village of Ikulama was alive with whispers, the villagers torn between awe and suspicion. Amara's once flat belly now swelled with life, a sight that seemed to defy the natural order. Some called it a miracle, while others murmured about curses and spirits. Amara, however, ignored the voices around her. She spent her days preparing for the arrival of her child, her hope stronger than ever. As the final days of her pregnancy approached, the skies over Ikulama darkened once more. Heavy clouds gathered, swirling ominously, and a cold wind swept through the village. The elders spoke in hushed tones, their faces lined with worry. "Another storm," one muttered. "It's just like the night the Baobab tree split." That evening, as thunder rumbled in the distance, Amara felt the first pangs of labor. She clutched her stomach, her breath hitching as waves of pain coursed through her. Obinna, wide-eyed with concern, helped her onto the bathing mat they had prepared. Outside, the storm grew fiercer, lightning streaking across the sky and illuminating the village in flashes of blinding light. The storm's intensity unnerved the villagers. Many gathered in their homes, murmuring prayers and lighting protective charms. "This storm isn't natural," they whispered. "It's the curse of that child she carries." Inside her heart, Amara fought through the pain. Each contraction felt like it would split her apart, but she held on, her mind focused on the life she was about to bring into the world. Obinna knelt beside her, his voice steady as he reassured her. "You are strong, Amara. You can do this." The hours dragged on, the storm outside raging in tandem with Amara's labor. Lightning struck close to the hut, shaking the ground and sending a fiery glow through the cracks in the walls. Obinna flinched, but Amara did not waver. She remembered the words of the goddess Obianuju. "When the storm comes, stand strong." As dawn approached, the storm reached its peak. Then, in a final, agonizing push, Amara felt the release of her child entering the world. The baby's first cry pierced the air, high and clear like a song. In that moment, the storm abruptly ceased. The wind died, the rain stopped, and the clouds parted to reveal a golden sunrise. A hush fell over the village as the eerie stillness settled. Amara cradled her newborn daughter in her arms, tears streaming down her face. The baby's skin glowed faintly, as if kissed by the sun, and her tiny hand reached out instinctively toward her mother. Amara and Obinna gazed at her in awe, their hearts swelling with love. "We shall name her Ifunanya," Amara whispered, her voice trembling. "It means love. She is the answer to all we've prayed for." As the morning light spread across Ikulama, villagers gathered outside Amara's hut, drawn by curiosity and wonder. When Obinna stepped out to announce the birth, the people gasped at the sight of him holding the child. From afar, they could see a strange mark on the baby's arm, shaped like the twisting roots of a baobab tree. Some fell to their knees, whispering prayers, while others exchanged uneasy glances. "It's a sign," one elder said. "This child is not ordinary." But not all saw the mark as a blessing. "It's a curse," Adana, a sharp-tongued woman in the village, muttered. "That storm wasn't natural. No good will come from this child." In the days that followed, the village's reaction to Ifunanya's birth became a mix of reverence and suspicion. Some brought gifts to Amara's hut, hoping to earn the favor of the child they now called the Blessed One. Others avoided Amara entirely, convinced that her daughter's powers would bring misfortune. Amara felt the weight of the villagers' scrutiny. While she was overjoyed to finally hold her child, a sense of unease began to grow within her. At night, she would watch Ifunanya sleep, her tiny chest rising and falling peacefully, and wonder what kind of future awaited her. The mark on her arm was a constant reminder of the trials foretold by Chokodi. Could she protect her child from a world that seemed both awed and threatened by her existence? One evening, as she rocked Ifunanya to sleep, Amara whispered, "You are my miracle, my love. I will protect you, no matter what. Whatever storms come our way, we will face them together." But deep in her heart, Amara knew that the true trials were just beginning. The storm had passed, but the winds of change were only just stirring in the village of Ikulama. The gifted child. As the years passed, Ifunanya grew into a radiant young girl, her presence captivating everyone around her. Her golden brown skin glowed in the sunlight, and her eyes seemed to hold an ancient wisdom far beyond her years. From an early age, it was clear that she was no ordinary child. The mark of the Baobab tree on her arm seemed to pulse faintly whenever she used her gifts, an unspoken reminder of the mystery surrounding her birth. A child of miracles. Ifunanya's extraordinary abilities began to manifest in subtle ways. It started with small acts of healing. A child with a fever would touch her hand and wake up well the next morning. A villager injured in a fall would have their wounds miraculously healed after Ifunanya visited them. The people of Ikulama were astonished, and word of her power spread quickly. During a particularly harsh dry season, the village's crops began to wither, and the wells ran dangerously low. Driven by desperation, a group of villagers came to Amara's hut, pleading for Ifunanya's help. Though the child was only 8 years old, she stepped forward confidently, her voice soft but steady. "I will try," she said simply. She walked to the edge of the fields, knelt on the cracked soil, and placed her small hands on the earth. Closing her eyes, she whispered a prayer under her breath. Moments later, dark clouds gathered overhead, and a gentle rain began to fall. The villagers cheered, many dropping to their knees in gratitude. "She is truly blessed," an elder declared. "The gods have sent her to save us." But not everyone shared this sentiment. Adana, a bitter woman whose jealousy of Amara had festered for years, began to sow seeds of doubt among the people. Whispers of sorcery. "She's not a child of the gods," Adana hissed to anyone who would listen. "Her powers are unnatural, and that mark on her arm is proof. It's a sign of dark spirits. Mark my words, nothing good will come of this girl." Adana's accusations found willing ears among some of the villagers, particularly those who had long been wary of Ifunanya. Whispers of sorcery began to spread, and soon, the very people who had once praised Ifunanya started to view her with suspicion. When a string of bad luck struck the village, a sickness among the livestock, a sudden infestation of locusts, Adana was quick to place the blame on Ifunanya. "She may heal the sick and summon rain, but at what cost? We must protect ourselves from her dark magic." Amara's fierce defense. Amara was furious when she heard the rumors. She confronted Adana in the marketplace, her voice ringing out with a strength that silenced the crowd. "You dare accuse my daughter without proof?" she demanded. "Ifunanya has done nothing but bring kindness and blessings to this village. Shame on you for spreading lies." Adana sneered. "And what do you know of her power, Amara? How can you be so sure it is a gift and not a curse?" "The Baobab tree split the night she was born. That was no blessing." The villagers murmured, torn between Amara's words and Adana's accusations. The once revered Baobab tree, a symbol of unity and strength, had now become a point of division. Some saw it as a sacred sign tied to Ifunanya's destiny, while others viewed it as an omen of misfortune. Amara returned home that evening, her heart heavy. She watched Ifunanya play with her younger siblings, 2 boys born in the years after her miraculous birth, and wondered how long she could shield her daughter from the growing hostility in the village. A heavy burden. Ifunanya, now old enough to understand the tension around her, began to feel the weight of her abilities. While she loved helping others, she longed for a normal life, free from the constant scrutiny and expectations. She confided in her mother one night as they sat under the stars outside their hut. "Mama," she said softly, "why did the gods give me these powers? I don't want people to fear me. I just want to be like everyone else." Amara placed a comforting hand on her daughter's shoulder. "My child, you were born with a purpose. The gods do not give such gifts lightly. You are special, not because of what you can do, but because of who you are. Do not let their fear dim your light. But what if they never stop fearing me? Ifunanya whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. Amara pulled her close. Then we will face them together, my love. Remember, storms come and go, but the Baobab tree stands tall. You must stand tall, too. The divided village. Despite Amara's reassurance, the division in the village deepened. Those who revered Ifunanya began leaving small offerings at the base of the split Baobab tree, hoping to gain her favor. Others, emboldened by Adana, avoided the tree altogether, calling it cursed ground. Ifunanya continued to perform small miracles, her kindness winning over some but fueling the resentment of others. The tension reached a boiling point when a villager claimed to see her speaking to animals in the forest. She's a witch, the man cried. She consults with spirits. Amara knew that the situation was becoming dangerous. She felt torn. How could she protect her daughter without stifling her gifts? And how could she prove to the villagers that Ifunanya's powers were a blessing, not a curse? Little did she know, the trials foretold by Elder Chokudi were far from over. Ifunanya's destiny was unfolding, and the storm brewing in Ikulama was only the beginning, betrayal and sacrifice. The tension in Ikulama had reached a breaking point. Adana's whispers of sorcery had evolved into outright accusations. She and a small group of conspirators spread a dangerous rumor: Ifunanya's powers were draining the village's prosperity. Crops that had begun to falter due to an unseasonable drought were blamed on her, as were the illnesses spreading among the livestock. She takes from us to fuel her magic, Adana declared in the marketplace. If we don't act, she'll ruin us all. Despite Amara's protests and the loyalty of some villagers who still believed in Ifunanya's goodness, the seeds of fear had been sown. People began avoiding Amara's family, and offerings at the Baobab tree ceased. Ifunanya noticed the change but tried to remain brave, even as she felt the weight of the village's growing resentment. The betrayal. One fateful night, Adana put her sinister plan into motion. Under the cover of darkness, she crept to Amara's home, her accomplices standing guard outside. The family slept soundly, unaware of the danger lurking nearby. Adana slipped into Ifunanya's room, her heart pounding with both fear and determination. She believed that the child's power lay in her hair, its faint golden sheen a constant reminder of her otherworldly origins. Taking a sharp blade, she cut a lock of Ifunanya's hair and fled into the night. The next morning, Amara awoke to find Ifunanya pale and listless. Her daughter's once vibrant glow had faded, and her mark, the Baobab tree, had grown faint. When Ifunanya tried to stand, she collapsed, her strength gone. Something is wrong, Amara whispered, panic rising in her chest. Obina rushed to find help, but the villagers refused, their fear of Ifunanya now fully ignited by Adana's lies. The village in chaos. Without Ifunanya's powers, the village began to unravel. The drought worsened, and crops withered in the fields. The livestock grew sicker, and the air of despair hung heavily over Ikulama. Those who had once doubted Ifunanya's abilities began to realize the truth: her powers had been keeping the village in balance. She was our protector, an elder murmured, his voice heavy with regret. We have doomed ourselves. Adana, however, refused to admit her wrongdoing. This is proof she was draining us all along, she insisted. But her words rang hollow as the villagers' suffering deepened. Seeking Neka. Desperate to save her daughter, Amara remembered the cryptic words of Neka, the elder who had first appeared to her beneath the Baobab tree. Gathering what strength she had, Amara carried Ifunanya on her back and set off into the forest to find the mysterious woman. The journey was arduous, and Amara's heart ached with every step. Ifunanya's breathing grew shallower, and her skin was cold to the touch. Amara prayed silently, pleading for the gods to guide her. At last, she reached the clearing where she had first met Neka. The elder was waiting, her eyes filled with a knowing sadness. I have been expecting you, Neka said softly. The storm has come, Amara, and now you must decide how far you are willing to go. Please, Amara begged, tears streaming down her face. Tell me how to save her. Neka's gaze turned grave. To restore your daughter's life and her gifts, you must journey to the river of eternity, where the gods dwell. There, you must offer something priceless to you, a sacrifice that reflects the depth of your love. What kind of sacrifice? Amara asked, her voice trembling. The river will decide, Neka replied. But know this, the gods do not accept half measures. Your offering must come from the heart, or it will fail. Amara nodded, determination hardening her resolve. I will do whatever it takes. They journeyed to the river. The river of eternity was a sacred place, spoken of in hushed tones. It was said to lie at the edge of the known world, its waters shimmering with the light of the heavens. Amara carried Ifunanya through dense forests and across rocky plains, the journey testing her endurance and willpower. As she approached the river, the air grew thick with an unearthly energy. The water glowed softly, its surface rippling with colors that seemed to shift and dance. Amara knelt at the riverbank, cradling Ifunanya in her arms. Oh, great gods of the river of eternity, she called out, her voice breaking. I have come to beg for my daughter's life. Take whatever you must, my life, my soul, but please, save her. The water stirred, and a voice echoed in the air, neither male nor female but filled with immense power. Your love for your child is strong, Amara. But the sacrifice must come from your deepest heart. Amara thought of her most cherished possession, a small beaded bracelet Obinna had given her on their wedding day. It was a symbol of their love, their struggles, and their triumphs. Removing it from her wrist, she placed it into the river. The water shimmered, and the voice spoke again. This is a token of love, but it is not enough. The ultimate sacrifice is your connection to her. Are you willing to give up the bond you share? Amara's heart clenched. To lose the bond with her daughter, to know Ifunanya might not remember her, was a pain she could barely comprehend. But she looked down at her child's pale face and knew there was no choice. Yes, she whispered. I will give up our bond if it means she will live. The sacrifice accepted. The river glowed brighter, and a figure emerged from its depths, a glowing goddess, her form radiant and commanding. She extended her hands, and Ifunanya's body lifted from Amara's arms, suspended in the air. Your sacrifice has been accepted, the goddess said. Your daughter's life and gifts will be restored, but the bond you shared will fade. She will live as her destiny demands, though she may not remember your love. Amara watched as Ifunanya's glow returned, her mark of the Baobab tree shining brightly once more. Tears streamed down her face, a mix of relief and sorrow. As the goddess disappeared back into the river, Ifunanya awoke, her eyes bright and full of life. Mama, she asked, her voice soft but confused. Amara smiled through her tears. You are safe now, my love. That is all that matters. But deep in her heart, she mourned the bond she had given up, knowing it was the price of her daughter's future. The storm had passed, but Amara's sacrifice would never be forgotten, redemption at the river. Amara stood at the edge of the village, clutching the golden bracelet Obinna had given her on their wedding day. The bracelet was more than just a piece of jewelry, it was a symbol of their love, their shared dreams, and the hope they had clung to during the hardest times. Now, it was all she could offer to save her daughter. Behind her, the villagers watched in silence. Some whispered prayers for her success, while others looked on with guilt for their part in spreading rumors about Ifunanya. Even Adana stood among them, her face pale with regret. Amara did not look back as she stepped into the wilderness, her heart set on reaching the river of eternity. The perilous journey. The path to the river was fraught with danger. Amara moved through dense forest where the air felt heavy with unseen forces. The trees seemed to whisper her name, their twisted branches clawing at her clothes. At one point, she stumbled into a clearing where a giant serpent coiled around an ancient stone. Its eyes glowed like embers as it hissed, blocking her path. "You seek the river of eternity," the serpent said, its voice deep and menacing. "But are you prepared to face your greatest fears?" Amara stood her ground, her voice trembling but firm. "I will face whatever I must. My daughter's life depends on it." The serpent lunged, and Amara braced for the strike, but it dissolved into a cloud of smoke. In its place appeared the face of her greatest fear, herself, aged and alone, her hands empty and her heart heavy with loss. "You will lose everything," the vision whispered. "Even if you save her, you will be forgotten." Tears filled Amara's eyes, but she clenched her fist. "I would rather lose everything than live knowing I did nothing. My love for her is stronger than my fear." The vision faded, and the path ahead cleared. Amara pressed on, her resolve unshaken. The river of eternity. After days of travel, Amara reached the river of eternity, its waters shimmering with an unearthly light. The air around the river was warm and still, filled with a divine energy that made her knees tremble. As she approached the water's edge, the golden bracelet clutched in her hand, a radiant figure emerged from the river. It was the goddess Obianuju, her presence both comforting and commanding. "You have come far, Amara," she said, her voice like a melody on the wind. "Your love for your daughter has brought you here. But love requires sacrifice. Are you willing to give up everything for her life?" Amara knelt, tears streaming down her face. "Yes," she whispered. "Take my life if you must. Just let her live." Obianuju regarded her with sorrowful eyes. "The gods do not seek your death, Amara. But the bond you share with your daughter must be severed. She will live and fulfill her destiny, but the love you hold for her will become a memory, distant and faint." Amara's heart broke at the thought, but she nodded. "If that is the price, I will pay it." She placed the golden bracelet into the river. The water glowed brighter, the light spreading across the surface until it seemed to envelop the entire world. Amara felt a surge of warmth in her chest, followed by a deep stillness. A new beginning. Amara awoke to the sound of birds chirping and sunlight streaming through her window. She was back in her hut in Ikulama. For a moment, she wondered if it had all been a dream, but then she saw Ifunanya standing before her skin glowing with health and her eyes bright with life. "Good morning, Mama," Ifunanya said softly, her voice like music to Amara's ears. Amara's heart swelled with joy, but a faint sadness lingered. She reached out to touch her daughter's face, but the mark of the Baobab tree that had defined Ifunanya's life was gone. In its place was smooth, unblemished skin, a symbol of a new beginning. The villagers gathered outside, their faces filled with awe and remorse. Adana stepped forward, her head bowed. "We were wrong," she said, her voice trembling. "We let fear blind us. You have shown us what true love and sacrifice mean." Amara nodded, her voice steady but soft. "Let this be a lesson for us all. Fear divides, but love heals. Protect Ifunanya, not because she is extraordinary, but because she is one of us. A symbol of resilience." From that day forward, Ifunanya was no longer feared or envied but cherished as a beacon of hope. The villagers worked together to rebuild what had been lost, their unity stronger than ever. The Baobab tree, though still split, became a gathering place once more, its roots a reminder of Amara's sacrifice and the trials the village had overcome. Amara remained a quiet figure in the background, watching Ifunanya thrive with a bittersweet pride. She knew that her daughter's destiny was unfolding as it should, even if their bond had been forever altered. In her heart, she held the knowledge that love, even when sacrificed, leaves an indelible mark on the world. And so, the village of Ikulama flourished, its people carrying forward the story of Amara, the woman who defied the storms, a tale of resilience, sacrifice, and the transformative power of faith.